Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on when you are listening to this or watching this. As we're recording, it's May 14th, and I have just finished attending a graduation ceremony of JCM High School. And my guest, Ashley Akerson, is an art teacher in the same building where I work, except it's a different school. And if you're confused by that, so are we sometimes. But Ashley is the art teacher at JCM Middle School. So Ashley, before we even get into any of the main things that we're going to talk about, how are you feeling with only, let's see, let me count this, 7 school days left in the year? Are you hanging in there?
I am hanging in there. I would be lying if I didn't say I was excited. I am looking forward to laying in a hammock in the middle of the day with a sweet tea in my hand.
Any teacher that says they are not excited for summer they lie. It is a bold-faced lie. Let me just get that out there. I've been teaching for 20 years, and I get excited about summer every single May, including this one. Although I'm teaching summer school, or I'm going to be a facilitator at summer school this year. That's okay. I'll still get like a few weeks after that.
For sure.
Now, how many years have you taught at JCM Middle?
This is my third year at
Third
JCM.
year. Okay, third year at JCM. And before that, you were where?
Before that, I taught 2 years in Nashville many moons ago. I worked 3 years at Union as a resident director, and then I worked a year at Turntable and was also a resident at Companion Gallery in Humboldt.
Awesome. Okay, so as an art teacher, when I was in the classroom, I was an ELA teacher. And I was an ELA teacher because I loved reading, I loved literature. I didn't necessarily know if I liked teaching. I don't think I was like, quote unquote, you hear people say that I was called to be a teacher. I don't think I was called to be a teacher. I knew I wasn't good enough to be a writer professionally. So I thought, okay, what's the closest thing I can get to that? And it's teaching English. So as an art teacher, did you want to be a teacher, or was it your love for art that sort of created this opportunity?
For sure. I relate to that completely. Always knew, I can remember in high school saying I want to work with art and I want to work with kids, but I didn't necessarily need that to be in a classroom. And so going through school, I was like, I don't know what that means. And my professors were like, I don't know what that means. And so I've just kind of figured it out along the way, but I have always loved art, have always loved working with kids, and so it just naturally happened.
Well, let's start with art first. So were you someone who was, I'm going to put artistic in quotes, like artistic from the time you can remember, like you love to create, you love to color, draw, whatever. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, I have. I actually have never enjoyed coloring, but all the other things, yes, for sure. My earliest memories are of like getting into my mom's photo stash and like collaging with her photos and magazines. That was a big no-no, but it was my favorite thing to do. And then I just, grew into sketching little doodles and cartoons, which when I got older into school, I took APR classes and developed there, and then ended up majoring in art in college.
Did you always have a talent or a gift for being artistic? And what I mean by that is like you could draw something and it looked good. Like, did you naturally have that gift?
So I think some things I definitely had to practice. I think I was always amazed at the girls who could just like draw a horse and it looked like a horse running in a field, I couldn't do that, or it took me a little while to master people, but I think once you learn the skills and the technique, I tell the kids that anybody can be an artist. You just got to figure out what exactly to do.
I've heard that too, and I struggle to believe it because here's why. I love art, but I have zero talent. Like I would love to be able to, draw a certain way or create, like I think I have good ideas, but as far as just implementing them on a page or on a canvas, it's really bad. And I was told one time, I used to take my daughter to the Dallas Museum of Art. Every third Friday it was free and we would just go when she was little, and they would have these just canvases set up and you could just go, people could go sketch and do all these interactive things. And I had someone who worked at the museum, they told me, they were like, essentially you can sort of tell when someone stops drawing regularly or at least stops receiving training in art, because even as an adult, basically what they were saying is your drawing looks like a second or third graders, but
Mhm.
they didn't mean it mean, but they could tell when I probably stopped doing it. Is that true?
Yeah.
Like, have you found that to be true?
Yes, for sure. Like even with the kids at school, when we do warm up, you like have a do now or a bell ringer. It's like draw a squirrel eating a marshmallow. Like you can definitely see you haven't done this yet. Like, this is, and then you see kids who's like, did you draw a squirrel yesterday? Like, why does this look so good? But I think just the more practice you have at it, the more you learn to see artistically. It develops your skills, I think, over time.
Were were you drawn to certain mediums of art? Like you mentioned collage when you were younger. As you aged, were there certain, did you like sculpture? Did you like three-dimensional aspects? Did you like to paint? What were you drawn?
Yeah, I think I just dabbled in it all. Whatever I had access to. So when I was youngest, it was sketching and doodling. When I got to high school, most of my portfolios were mixed media, but mostly paint and color pencil, acrylic paint and color pencil, because that's what I had nearby. And then when I got to college, I love the people in the ceramic studio, and so I jumped into clay. But I think naturally now in this season, I think in terms of sculpture or installation pieces. But I think I've just always whatever was closest, I would just jump right in.
So you teach art, and you said this is your third year at JCM Middle, and you taught in Nashville previously. Your experience as a student, did you attend a public school or a private school?
I attended mostly public schools. I went to 1 year of private school, but I don't even think we had an art program, and it was a really small school, church school, but all public schools all throughout.
The reason I ask is because I remember hearing even 20 years ago, like when it came time for budget cuts, generally what would get cut first from schools is art programs, music, things like that, these subjects that they considered quote unquote extracurricular. You and I both know all of this stuff works hand in hand together for like a well-rounded education. Unfortunately, those seem to be the things that get cut first or receive the least amount of attention. Growing up, what were your art programs like as a student? We'll just start in middle school. Like how was your middle school art program as, for someone who was talented in that area? Like did you feel fulfilled with whatever program you had or
I think about my middle school art class often because I don't remember it. And I think that's so interesting. I don't know if it was the teacher. I don't know if it was the program. I do think I only took it a semester or two, but I know in general that school. So I went from predominantly black Title I school for middle school, and we moved to a different county for high school, which was like one of the top schools in the state of Georgia. And so all white school, and so predominantly white. But the resources that were available were drastically different. And so I don't know I can't speak specifically to the art program, but I do know that I recognized it in all my other subjects. And so I would say middle school was probably lacking since I don't remember it. But my high school art classes, I came to life. I think there were so many experiences we had, and I really appreciated it.
did you take art all 4 years in high school? Is that, and you said you took AP as well? Is how much of the artistic process did you participate in, like outside of school, just on your own, as something that you like to do, in your free time?
Sure. So for my AP classes, for sure, we were allowed to take work home because we had to build a portfolio. And so I think just like homework or studying, that was a part of my weekly process. I remember being involved in, like, we could submit art to different shows or whatnot. And so I remember my mom and I driving down to, I think it was the High Museum, where they had like a Black History show that my work was accepted into. And so there was just art all around. And so we had a lot of different opportunities. But we lived in an apartment, and I remember like having a wall in my bedroom where I would like tack my work up and just paint. And by the time we moved out of that wall, there was paint splatters all over that wall. I don't know how my mom allowed me to do that, but I know she did not deposit back.
Well, hey, you know what? I've got a daughter, and I think there are things that when you see they're passionate about something, you let them go, and then you pick up the pieces afterwards. So I get it. I get it. You mentioned earlier access was a word you used, and when we get deeper into this conversation about the nonprofit that you're starting, I think the word access has been used in things I've read about that as well. How important is, because I do feel like, and if we're just being completely honest, when you have schools with the majority low socioeconomic population, the resources at those schools generally aren't the same as at other schools. And as I mentioned before, a lot of times the programs that get cut first are the arts. People are going to take care of sports programs. They bring in money. People are going to take care of the other academics because of the standardized testing. But then sometimes the arts get just sort of pushed over to the side. Do you believe that we know there's discrepancies across the board in, certain schools with lower socioeconomic populations compared to schools that with higher socioeconomic populations. Do you believe there's a really big discrepancy between access and opportunities for art between those two schools, even more so than maybe other subjects?
Yeah, I would say for sure. I think even when you're talking about visual arts, if you're thinking about students in lower economic or lower socioeconomic communities, students might have access to dance or music or chorus because of church or whatnot, and they can see these different arts developed. Whereas visual arts, I think you actually have to, I think you have to travel more or prioritize those efforts more to actually see art and appreciate art. I mean, we're in the digital age, so we have the internet, but I think you already have to have interest in those areas to start seeking those out. Whereas you get in your car, you turn in your music, there's vocal arts. But one thing that one of my professors in college always said was just look at art every day. Look at hundreds of pictures of art every day, and it'll seep into you, and then it'll come out of you in your actual practice. And so I know that he said when he had children, he would just take his kids and like hold them up at art museums in front of art, and they're like infants or toddlers, they don't know what's happening, but they're taking in that information and it will work in their brain and develop in certain ways. So I think you do have to there has to be an extra step, I think, most times for visual arts.
It sounds so similar to reading as well. Whenever I would have parent teacher conferences, they would say, well, what can I do? I was like, listen, just get your student to read 30 minutes a night. Like that's just read. I don't care what it is. Like it needs to be, like close to their grade level, but whatever they're interested in, just read. And a lot of times those skills sort of build themselves if you do it consistently. And it sounds like it's sort of the same way with art. Like get in front of it, look at it. Growing up, did you have access to those types of places? Did you go to museums or did you seek that out?
It wasn't like an every weekend thing, but I grew up in a suburb of Atlanta, so I do think there was stuff always around. We would go to museums, with school for field trip. I mentioned the High Museum. I've been there a few times growing up. And then I think my parents were really good at, once you have an interest, we're gonna figure out how to get you involved. So my parents were buying art kits, showing me work, just like really developing that interest as I was growing.
When you started teaching art in the school, we can, use your Nashville time as an example or your time at JCM now as an example. Was the process of teaching those skills more difficult than what you thought it would be? Or did you have to consciously throttle yourself back and say, okay, they're not at this skill level, so I've got to back this down?
Oh, sure. Yes. I think to a degree. I think I don't love teaching. I love being with kids. I love seeing them create. So I don't love standing in front of the classroom and lecturing, so to say. But I love putting a prompt out and seeing where kids run with it. And so I think in terms of that, I was really surprised at the challenge that kids had with creativity. I don't know if there's so much that could play into this, but our kids are creative beings, but I just saw over and over again, starting at middle school, but definitely when I taught high school for those couple of years, they just shut down if you asked them to use their imagination. And so I think I took it on as my challenge to re-spark that plug for imagination, and to give, I would do every Wednesday, I would give one of those silly prompts where it would be like, draw a clown riding a macaroni. And they'd be like, what? You got to figure it out. And so I was like, this is not a yes or no question. You have to think outside of the box. And I think that is probably, that skill right there was harder to teach, in quotations, than teaching value or teaching how to draw a three-dimensional shape. And so that's what I really tried to focus in on for several different projects.
Your school in Nashville, was it a low socioeconomic school as well?
It was a magnet school, but it was Title I as well. It was elementary.
I think with creativity, and I've sort of found this to be true in a lot of places I've taught as well. And I don't know if it's kids, because I think if you're going to be super creative and kind of put that out there, it takes a certain vulnerability. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of the kids I've taught in the past, like there's a wall there. And for any, honestly, for any middle school kid, just being vulnerable is just not going to happen naturally.
Yes.
For most adults, same.
Hmm.
So I think that that's part of it. And then what I've noticed as well is to be really creative, you got to have a lot of different perspectives of things. And if you haven't had a lot of different experiences, you're going to be really pigeonholed in the way that you think. A lot of times it's just
Hmm.
this myopic way of thinking. Clown on macaroni, like, whoa, like, what do they do with
Yeah.
that? Is that something that you found to be true with art as well, where you have kids and you can tell they have that creative talent, but it's just trying to get them to open up and let it out.
Yeah, I think I really try to push, like, I want to see your perspective because because they don't have that many perspectives to choose from, they'll look to their neighbor or they'll Google real quick. But I'm like, I want to see what you come up with because you're the artist. And I think I found that so many, I mean, especially middle schoolers and high schoolers, they're afraid to fail. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to fail. But I'm like, that's so much of art in the creative process is trying, failing. And then eventually you try and you get something you like and you keep working with that. And so I'm in our class time, I find that probably by like that fall break or spring break point, kids are finally like, okay, what are we doing? Like they finally like let the wall down, hard shell down, and they're willing to break out of like they're really to try to think creatively, but it takes time and it takes some pushing.
It's so interesting because art within the context of the school, right? You said the way that you get better art is you fail and then you
Hmm.
fix it, then you maybe fail again, and then you fail again. It almost runs in direct opposition to every other subject, especially with the emphasis on testing in public education right now, where
Hmm.
they got to get it right or they get points deducted, right? They got to get it right on the first try on a test or
Hmm.
they get points deducted. And the creative process is the opposite of that. And really learning is actually the opposite of that. Like you learn by messing up. And it's like we've sort of got it backwards in the other subject, but art is is where you can really explore that. I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, my first year at JCM, we would do these learning walks through different
Hmm.
classrooms, and we came into your room. I think you were teaching at the high school some then as well,
Hmm.
and I got home that night and I called my girlfriend. She was an art major too. She works in design, and I was like, I was in an art class today, and it was amazing. The reason I say that is you had music playing, and I can't remember the artist, but it was an artist that I knew. I know this song, and the kids all got their stuff, and they were just working on their own at their own pace, on their own work, and they were all engaged. And I was like, this is how this should work in every
Yeah.
class. Is that sort of your process where you give them an assignment and then they just sort of work through it on their own? Is that how that generally works?
Yeah, they come in. I try to always have music going, and I guess that's because I'm an artist. I'm like I can't stand sitting in a silent classroom because in the studio you always have something in the background. I try to have. That's funny that you say you recognize the artist because I've transitioned to like neo soul jazz, and the kids are like, "What is this?"
What?
But we'll do our bell ringer, roar now, or whatever. And then that first day, I kind of teach the history behind the project, or I demonstrate whatever the skills are. And then the rest of it is like 2 weeks of figuring it out. And
Mm.
somewhere in there, I might have to, jump on the Elmo and do a demonstration or teach a new skill so we can get further. But it's just cranking out the project. And you might mess up. You might have to get another sheet of paper. You might, I might have to sit next to you and show you, hey, let's make this a little darker. Let's try to make this more proportional. But that's really the process.
Have there been assignments that you can think of that every single year the kids are going to love this, like they're going to like this more than any other assignment that I give? And if so, what is that? Like, what did kids really get into in your class?
Yeah, I try to always do a portrait and a sculpture, whether it's a self-portrait or a portrait of celebrity. The kids have a harder time with that one because they want to see it right. But I've had so many kids by the end of it be like, I didn't think I could do that. Or like this, I'm really proud of this, because just like sitting there and chewing on the skill and getting their project done. But the projects they always love are the sculpture projects. We usually will do like a paper mache situation. We've done food, we've done monsters, we've done make your own creatures. And then one year I did like a foam where they like carved abstract shape into the foam, but they really like building it up with like working on that three-dimensional material.
It's interesting. And I wonder if it's because it's tactile, or they can just, they have something in their hands and they can shape it physically rather than just
I
trying to
think
like.
so. Trying to bring it from the abstract.
Right. And I think at that age in middle school anyway, and also honestly, I just think abstract thinking is like sort of circling the drain. I shouldn't say it like that, but it does.
It is. I mean, it's on that like higher level of
It is,
thinking,
yeah.
when you do the blooms, it's up
Hmm.
there.
And and I hate to sound so old when I say this, but I think technology and phones and how much kids are on there, like these worldviews are so myopic. Like you just
Mhm.
live inside your phone that spits things back out that you like, and so it's just this like cycle over and over and over again, and so it's really hard to get outside that and get into that abstract level. I want to transition the conversation here and talk about sort of what I'm really curious about. Although I was very fascinated by just the first 30 minutes of this conversation as well, just as a fellow educator. You are starting or have started a nonprofit called Dreamers and Makers. And I have intentionally not read up on it as much as I should have, because I have like genuine questions and I want you to fill in the blanks for me. So you said you like work, you wanted to work with art, you want to work with kids when you're in college, and you're teaching obviously, but now this looks like the next step in that process.
Mhm.
So how long had you been thinking about doing this before you finally pulled the trigger and said, yeah, I'm going to?
I thought it was September of last year, so September 2024. I was like, what do I really want to do? What can I do? And so I brainstormed. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I've been thinking about. And then I ran it by family and friends, close friends, and they were like, wait, you mentioned this in like I had a friend say, I interviewed you in for something in 2018 and you mentioned this, and I was like, what? And so I like really had to think back and be like, actually I have been thinking about this for a long time, I just hadn't felt it was the time. And then I guess October I was like, it's time. And we hit the ground running.
So that was only what, 6 months ago, 7 months
Yeah,
ago,
something
something
like
like
that.
that. So what was the impetus for this? I know obviously it's kids and it's art, but is there something beyond that? Like is it a specific part of the community you're going to focus on? Are there specific kids you're going to focus on? Like what is sort of the core mission, for lack of a better word, for this non?
Yeah, so we are an art centered after school program that focuses on visual and culinary arts for students to encourage confidence, creativity, and community. And we're focusing on underserved communities, but it's open to all middle school students in Jackson. And so really when I was thinking about this, I was thinking of specific kids who I've taught in the past however many years, and I was like, they love this. They love art. They don't necessarily, I mean, if you think about the typical middle school artsy kid, they're not in a sport. They're not the most popular kid. They might not excel in academics. And so I was like, I want a space where they can call their own and where they can really practice what they love. And that's where it started.
Do you have a building secured yet? Is it going to be a physical space, or is that in the?
We have a partnership in the works. It's not official. I mean, it's not. We haven't signed anything yet, so I'm not going to name drop. But it will be central and local in downtown Jackson.
You mentioned, I love alliteration, and I called onto this: confidence, creativity, and community. Those three things, like, are those working together in this, or are they kind of in their own buckets? Like art obviously can instill confidence, creativity, of course, and then community. Like, are all those working together, or is that just something that those are things that are valuable to you?
I think as an artist, those are just three things that if you're an artist working in your physical space in your neighborhood, in your community. Those are three aspects that are just naturally flow into each other and throughout your practice. In our program, we're focusing on a few things. We'll have, how do you say? Can I run through the schedule of the day? And that'll be helpful for me.
Yes, absolutely.
So depending on where students are coming from as far as schools, we'll pick up students or their parents or families will drop them off. We'll have a debrief time, like just calm down, relaxation time with snack, like kind of unwind from the craziness of the day. We'll move into our visual arts time, and so students throughout the semester will be working on an arts portfolio. So they'll brainstorm and come up with a theme or a skill or a storyline that they really want to delve in on, and they'll work on that throughout the semester. So they'll spend that time kind of creating all these works of art however they see fit with guidance of mentors. And then we'll clean up and then transition till dinner. So we'll make and enjoy a family style dinner every night, and that'll be the evening. However, in all of that, we'll also have community members coming in to lead workshops. So we'll have artists and chefs throughout the semester come in and lead a session on whatever they're good at. So photography, acai bowls, whatever falls into the realm of visual or culinary arts, to give exposure to the students. And so we have workshops, and then we'll also take a couple of field trips in the semester locally. And so that might be to a ceramic studio, that might be to the Ned, to a restaurant and get a behind the scenes tour and a little dinner or something, just so they can also get that further exposure. And then I'm missing one element. We'll end the semester with an art showcase at the Havners. Wow. And so the students will be able to work through the process of what does it look like to show your work and engage with the community. Pieces will be for sale, and so they'll work through all of that and provide snacks or whatever that they come up with recipes at the showcase. So there's a lot of moving parts, but we'll see how it goes.
That sounds amazing. How many days a week? Is this going to be a 5-day-a-week program?
It'll be Monday through Thursday. So 4 days a week.
Monday through Thursday. And then you say it's like after school, you said middle school age, correct?
2:30 to 5:30, middle school.
2:30. Wow, 2:30 to 5:30. And so every night, y'all are going to do a meal every night? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So how do you, like on the first week, like will you do a meal the very first week of the thing? So you're just jumping right into it.
We're jumping right in. So I figure we'll start small. So there might be smaller, easier meals. I plan on being able to prep some things or having donations for days where we're busy. I've always really enjoyed cooking. I thought about going into culinary school when I was young, but also just knowing that some of our students don't get meals regularly, and then also seeing the quality of food that they have when breakfast and lunch is provided at school. I was like, they just need a nutritious meal. Why not make it fun? And so that was really the heartbeat around it.
Do you have a number in mind about how big you want this group to be on a daily basis?
Yeah, for our inaugural group, we'll have 10 students. So there'll be an application process. They'll apply online. There'll be a family interview where they interview with their parent so we can have a conversation kind of like this, see what their heart is. And so their parents also know the expectations of the program. And then there'll be a teacher recommendation portion. And then we'll have a committee of community members select 10 students, and it'll be a semester commitment.
Is there any cost to the student, or is that completely covered?
Completely free.
Unbelievable. So I guess I've noticed, I saw your Kickstarter, and full disclosure, I tried to contribute. However, I could not. I think there was something I had to sign in. I needed a password. Long story short, I did not end up signing in, but I'm still going to give. So it looks like you've gotten a lot of community support I think I tried to give after you'd reached your goal, but what's that been like with the community around you supporting you? Like, have you found that there's a good support system here for this in Jackson? For
sure. It's truly been so encouraging. The first day I soft launched the Instagram page, I had friends texting me and was like, this looks like it's you. Is this you? And I was like, calm down, y'all. But no, the friends, people I don't even know have come up to me, encouraged me, given, offered to volunteer. I've really been encouraged. It's just further proven that this is something we need here. And I've had people I graduated college with who grew up here locally, and they were like, I wish I could have had this growing up. Like, this would have made the world of difference. And so it's been super encouraging.
It's interesting the timing of this because I feel like there are two things happening right now. One locally, one more nationally. Locally, it seems like the emphasis on art in our community, like I don't remember it being like as big as it is now ever. I've been in Jackson my whole life, but there seems to be a big emphasis on art, public art. You mentioned Havners; they do art shows every month. This is a thing, like it's a tangible thing now in Jackson. Is that been your experience since you've been in Jackson too? Like recently, this just seems to be really popping.
It's true, yeah. In the last 2, 3 years, I feel like it's been what everyone's focusing on, and I love it. We need more of it.
The second thing, and I think this has just happened in the last few months. Obviously, at the national level, there have been cuts to, well, obviously funding for the arts. I believe the National Endowment for the Arts, weird stuff at the Kennedys, like all of these things. And this doesn't need to be a political conversation necessarily, but has all of these things that are happening at that level made you dig in even more like, hey, this is even more important now because some of this stuff is starting to get, untangled a little bit and funding it's being taken away already, like from an already underfunded,
Sure.
program. Is that anything that's in your mind now, or is that
Of
just
course,
white
yeah.
noise? Okay.
I think I'm keeping my eye on it. I don't know that I'm far enough along for it to be a huge worry, but I am aware of it. I think if anything, it is encouraging people to recognize that the arts might be something that for a period here we have to communally support, and if our government's not going to support it, because I think we all know to a degree the arts is what keeps us going. And so I think our people will get us where we need to go.
Do you think, and again, we mentioned Jackson and their emphasis on it, and I don't know about other towns and cities and things like that, but do you think that the value of art in general is often overlooked by local, I'm not saying, and again, local government in general, not Jackson, obviously, because especially for Mayor Conger's office, there seems to be like
Yeah.
a big push for this. But is that something that generally you feel is overlooked in communities, arts in general?
I think so, and I think especially from my experience in smaller towns, I grew up right outside of Atlanta, and so coming to Tennessee already was an eye opener as far as the lack of the arts in a lot of spaces. But I will say I was looking up data, and I wish I could remember the exact organization or study, but I had just simply Googled like funding for arts in the public schools and whatever the top national study was. That Madison County had like surpassed all of the counties in the surrounding area, because I was going to make a post about it and saying like, this is why we need this program, but I couldn't even do that because I was like, Madison County is on it, y'all. I think it was like 70. Well, all of our schools have the arts programs, and then yeah, we were doing well. So I think this is just in our location, it's a program that'll just further enhance interests of our students.
So every semester, like at the end, will 10 new students start the next semester? Is that how that's going to work?
Yeah, that's the thought. Students have the option to reapply, and depending on what the committee chooses. But I think I did it a semester by semester, in case students wanted to play basketball or if they had another interest that they wanted to jump into. But I would love for 20 students total in the year to 20 different students to participate.
So how do you plan on getting word out about like the kids? So will you send out stuff to the middle schools here in town and
Yeah, I
information like
plan
that?
on, well, like right now, I'll plan on talking to our students before they head out for the summer. But I also want to visit or, hand out flyers to churches, hand out flyers in communities, push it on the socials. Applications are open now and they'll close the second week of August. And so for this first semester of the new school year. So that's my next to-do list task is to get the word out about student applications.
So where can people find more information? Do you have a site? I know you have social media.
Yeah, dreamersandmakersartclub.com. Applications on there. There's also a place to volunteer if you wanna come and be a part of the program, and then there's also a place to donate.
So what about if like, let's say somebody like me, if I sign up to volunteer and I've already told you I have no artistic ability at all, like, could you use me? Like
For
somebody
sure.
like me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think anybody who just wants to be a positive influence, depending on what's going on in the semester, maybe that might be volunteering to come on a field trip. Maybe that'll be volunteering to help out during a workshop, or even just being a second pair of hands during the normal day if you want to see just be behind the scenes. I think the more positive influences our students can have, the better they'll be.
Have you looked at other programs are there other programs like this in other communities? Like, have you been able to sort of like say, okay, this is what works for them. I don't know if that would work for us, but we're going to try this instead. Like, are there models for this that you've looked at?
Yeah, well, of course, there's Keep My Hood Good here. My first conversation was with Miss Juanita, and so that was a framework for me to start. But there are other programs of art clubs and communities, especially like up north, Boston. There were some other cities that I looked into and kind of just picked their website for different things that have worked for them and followed on, the socials and things. But I won't say that this is entirely new, but I'm sure there are pieces I've pulled from different places that makes this unique.
You mentioned transportation. You said that will you all provide transportation
Yeah,
for the kids?
that's the hope. Since it's just me right now as the only full-time staff, the hope is to have a van for the program. My thought is that most of my students will come from JCM, so I'm thinking I'll do a local pickup from there. And then if other families can, drop them off at the site, then we'll do that. Then they can attend the program. But say I get 10 kids from North Parkway, I'll definitely go and scoop them up and come and we'll come back to the program. And I'll also plan on, for families who need it, dropping off at home.
That's what I was going to ask too. That was my next question. Are there attendance expectations? I mean, if it's 4 days a week for a whole semester and there's, you're hoping to get 10, but obviously there's a limited amount of slots. So if a student signs up, is there the expectation, hey, you need to be here at least X amount of days?
Yeah, I would think they need to be there. And that's kind of why I am hoping that they will be there Monday through Thursday for the semester. And I know there are things that come up, but just like we need attendance at school, and that's important, I think, for this program to be successful and for you to have a complete picture of what we're trying to accomplish. Every day is important.
I think it is the culinary aspect to me. Like, I just keep going back to that. Like, that's such a cool idea. And I know from my experience in the classroom, like, how many of the kids that I've taught like to cook, like they enjoy that process. We had at middle school Northeast, we used to have clubs, and there was a cooking club that 2 teachers did, and the kids loved it.
Yeah.
They would do recipes, and every time they would just make a meal or make us snacks, whatever it was. And the kids loved that club. Now I was like, there is no way in hell I would ever choose to sponsor that club, because I couldn't imagine in the middle of the day, like making a bunch of stuff and then having to clean up and then teach. Yeah, but they loved it. And I hear kids, in my class at JCM, like they talk about like what they cook or like what they like to cook. And so they love that process. And even my daughter, who's a senior, she has graduated, she loves to cook. Like we get these HelloFresh meals 2 nights a week.
Yeah.
She just loves the preparation aspect and trying new things or whatever. I don't know. I just kept going back to that. Like, that is such a cool idea, because one, it's educational, right? They can learn good things to eat that taste really good as well, and learn how to create that. And that's art in and of itself, right? I mean,
For sure, yeah.
cooking. Yeah. You watch The Bear? Are you a fan of The Bear?
Oh yeah, new season comes out soon.
I know. I'm so excited. Yeah. I love that show. Love it. Man, Ashley, this sounds like such a wonderful idea. And as soon as I saw a little bit of what it was going to be about, I was like, I've got to talk to her. I've got to get this out. I've got to write about this. I want to know more about it. And it's honestly exactly what I hoped it would be and what I thought it would be. So thank you so much for doing this. I know it's a huge lift, probably, I would imagine. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been rewarding for sure.
What's something, and then this is a end on a positive note here. what's something that has pleasantly surprised you about the community support that you've gotten throughout this experience?
Pleasantly surprised. Yeah, I don't know if it was a surprise, but I think it was just like a reassurance. Just this. So we finished up our Kickstarter last Friday. And just seeing everyone's support around that was so encouraging. I knew my folks, my home base, and I was like, I think they'll have my back. Like, I don't think I'm gonna press, because the goal was 10,000, and for me that was like, 10,000 is crazy big, but for some people that's nothing, But I was like, I don't know, should I make it 5,000? Like, I was going back and forth for a long time, but I think we hit 10,000 in 2 weeks. It was so encouraging, and seeing people share it multiple days, like, your Instagram, people don't share things over and over again, but people were like, you have to donate, and I was like, thanks y'all. But it was just so reassuring that we have a good community here in Jackson, and my family and friends from all over the nation, they really came through. And so I was just saying, it kind of pushed me to get to the next step, because it is tiring to start something from scratch. Like we were saying, the abstract thinking, to think of all the parts and put it together. This was a good boost to head into the summer.
I think it's great. I think if there was ever a time that we need something like this, I feel like this combines all of the things that are good, right? Like community support, the nonprofit, it's creativity, it's art, it's everything that is good about the creative process, at a time when I think a lot of that stuff is being maybe pushed to the side, or I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to be nice about it, but I feel like this is the right time and the right thing for this moment. So I'm really excited to see where this goes.
I appreciate you. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ashley. I appreciate you talking. And good luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.